Hi everybody, it's Shyla, Community Lead at Uplift, and today I'm joined by Aaron Ting, and he's a co-founder and head of marketing at Octopus Protocol. So thank you so much for joining us today, Aaron. Could you, let's just start by talking a bit about you, your experience and your background in this crypto world.
Hi, Shala. Well, thanks for having me here. I'm really honored to be part of the show. So my background is actually civil engineering. I ended up in the oil and gas industry for about 19 years. 9 years ago, I started crypto as a miner. And since then, I helped with setting up the blockchain association in Malaysia. So we work with governments, regulators, and stuff. And on the other hand, I also work with crypto projects, starting with NEM. I was in the first committee. Then I was marketing in the Zcoin, and a bunch of exchanges, wallets. And right now, with Octopus Network, it's a really exciting project because it's a multi-chain network. So I'm very fortunate to have the opportunity to basically be involved at relatively early stage of the industry growth, and sort of have seen like the ups and downs of the cycle. And I'm particularly interested in where we're headed.
Cool. Thank you for that. So yeah, it's nice to be speaking to people who have been in this space for a long time, because I feel like you can impart a lot of your knowledge onto us. So I'll be asking a bit more about that in a bit. So tell us a bit about Octopus Protocol. Give us like an elevator pitch. What's the best way to describe it? What problem is it solving?
Right. So Octopus Network is a multi-chain network that's based on Near protocol. And as you may know, there are two large pioneer multi-chain networks. One is Polkadot and the other one is Cosmos. So in a multi-chain network, there's two very important components. So one is actually a framework to quickly build and deploy a blockchain. So within the Polkadot ecosystem, there's something called Substrate, and it's very easy to build a Substrate chain. And in the Cosmos ecosystem, you have something called Cosmos SDK, which is more lightweight, but is also quite versatile. So within and then the other part would be the inter-blockchain communication. So within Polkadot, there's something called XCM, cross consensus messaging, and basically is a messaging protocol that is designed to have the property of composability, which means that any chain that's connected to the relay chain will act as if they're one chain or a big sharded chain, and they will have composability, which is necessary for DeFi. Whereas Cosmos have a different approach. So Cosmos has something basically called ICS, which is interchain standard, and below that they have IBC, which is inter-blockchain communication. So basically, what they want to be is they want to be sort of like the standard for inter-blockchain communication. Yeah. So when we look at these two major multi-chain networks, we've actually found some bottlenecks that we believe that we wanted to solve. So first off, on the Polkadot side, they're limited to 100 parachains on Polkadot, and of course they have a sister chain called Kusama or Canary chain, where it's also limited to 100. So we decide to create a network where it's infinitely scalable, and that is made possible by deploying to Near. So in short, what we do is we encourage people to use Substrate to launch their own chain, and that can be done in just 2 days' time. It comes with EVM, so it's like literally having your own Ethereum, and you can launch it as a sidechain to Near. But because we're a lot less complex, we don't try to achieve composability. So basically, it means that it is a lot simpler to set up. Now, in terms of our relationship with Cosmos, our team has won a grant from Cosmos to build the IBC bridge, IBC palette for Substrate. Basically, what it means is that we're sort of been put in. Well, not in charge, or has basically given the responsibility to connect Cosmos and Polkadot. So it's really exciting, and we're at the very last stage of this very long journey. It's been 2 years. And we also have a sub-team working on the IBC Docker for EVM. So this is what we're really excited about, because as you know, we have seen many bridges being built, and so many of them has been compromised. And what we hope to see in the next couple of months, once this technology is ready, is that everybody will be able to use a certain standard, and that would, reduce the risks related to, blockchain failures, hacks, so on and so forth. Yeah. So if you want to put it in a way, we are sort of like the third multi-chain network, and in a way, we're very cheap to deploy on, very easy to deploy on, and highly scalable. So that's our main value proposition. And I might, if I may add, there are many blockchains that is, sort of adopted this idea of side chains. So, for example, BNB, you can do that on BNB, you can do that on Avalanche. But I would say the main difference is that because we're using Substrate, you actually retain your sovereignty, meaning that if you're Avalanche subnet, you are forever bound to Avalanche. Whereas if you deploy as a Substrate chain on the Octopus network, you have a great advantage because you can decide to be your own independent chain in the future. And from being an independent chain, you also have the choice to join Polkadot or Kusama in the future. So this is our really rather unique design that we believe can add a lot of value, especially to small projects. And we have a great accelerator program, where we give away $1 million a year, 50K to 20 lucky projects every year. And we have a developer training for Substrate. We're the only other ones other than Parity to do that. And our approach is a lot more practical. So we found that some developers have found it extremely useful. So yeah, thank you.
That's brilliant. So not only like educating these developers on the Substrate, you also, I think it's really important that at this stage where the industry is growing, that projects are able to have that freedom, like I said, the sovereignty to be able to shift their blockchain should they decide, they want to work with somebody else. So for example, like you said, with Avalanche, if you go with Avalanche, you're stuck there. And that can be a lot of cost and resources involved in rebuilding on something else. So I think that's really a valuable thing to be offering new projects especially at this early stage in crypto. So yeah, that's really interesting. So am I right in thinking that you kind of support these current multi-chain networks?
Yes. Yeah. So our approach has always been that we want to solve industry bottlenecks together. And there's, for example, in the accelerator program, what we try to solve is we try to solve the information asymmetry between, largely entrepreneurs that want to get into the Web3 space, but they do not understand like the peculiarities of the space, and they lack knowledge in certain critical areas, for example, like fundraising or tokenomics. So we want to bridge that gap and make it possible for everyone to launch their own Web3 project. So that's one. In terms of developer training, we're working basically, in parallel with Parity in order to solve the bottleneck of, the availability of developers. But also at the same time, the multi-chain network is very special. And why do I say this? Is because nowadays we have very new protocols that's coming up. You may have heard of Layer 0 or Axelar or Nomad or Unilayer, for example. And these are all new multi-chain networks, and they use many different techniques in order to facilitate the functionality of asset transfer or cross-chain messaging, contract calls. So now one of the interesting examples of how these technologies are actually complementary is, for example, when you look at Layer 0. They're exciting because they're already worth $1 billion in private round, including Axelar as well. So what they do is they use oracles and they use relayers, for example, right? And in the IBC world, we use something called light client verification. Now, light client verification is known to be very secure, but it's very expensive as well. So the really interesting bit is that now with Layer 0 project, we can actually have a collaboration we use a relayer instead of like client verification in order to reduce the cost of an IBC transaction. Yeah. So this is really exciting, and it's really very much in the spirit of crypto, where everybody is just like learning from each other and adding to like the space, and everyone is just like solving all these issues together. So this is what I love the most.
Yeah, that's really important work. So well done for that. The other thing I wanted to ask is why NEAR? Why did you choose to build with NEAR?
Oh yeah, so the story goes back about 2 years ago when our core team, and I wasn't with the team just yet. I joined the team about a year ago. So they ran a very comprehensive study on all the new layer ones that's out there. Now the reason why we had to choose a layer one is because by design, our founder Louis Liu has come up with something that's quite contrarian. So let me explain what's this point of view. So if you look at Cosmos and if you look at Polkadot, then you realize that they have an idea where a single chain is sort of like the hub, where it facilitates sort of like the communication between other chains. But this chain is meant to be very lightweight, right? So because they don't want to overload it. So what we call is actually hub minimalism. Now, Lewis believes that, well, for example, if you want to create composability, there's no need to, because layer one they have it already, right? So why reinvent the wheel? So our technique is to is actually defined in an article, which I can share later on. But we call it the fat hub concept. So fat hub concept just means that we believe that all the DeFi transactions that require composability should be done on a really fast, capable, safe layer one, and all the other chains would be just connected to it. Now, there's a very good reason for this design, right? So, and I always like to equate this to, for example, how cities or certain countries develop. So, for example, hey, New York City is, for example, a financial city, right? So it's kind of like Ethereum in a sense, where so many large financial transactions goes on, and nobody minds paying like $30, $50, or $100 gas fees to get things across, because they're shifting millions of dollars, right? But if you're like a small GameFi protocol, then obviously you can't live with that. You can't pay that cost. And that's the reason why hey, a cheap, let's say, shoe manufacturing company is probably not in Manhattan, right? They're probably off somewhere, in the rural America, or maybe in other countries like China. So because of this, our idea is that each and every single application, in order to thrive, they need their own blockchain, but they need to be connected to like a financial center. So this is what we think. And there are advantages to having your own app chain. So for example, let's say I'm a DApp on Polygon, for example, right? And this DApp, let's say, is GameFi, and GameFi are a really like our target area because they generate so much transactions. Like, so for example, if I want to, let's say, if I earn certain tokens in a GameFi, then I would essentially have maybe 3 or 4 transactions. So the reasoning is that, let's say I earn like a particular token, then that token needs to, the revenue needs to be split up to the guild, to like the game account, to like the scholar and stuff like that. So like a single action generates like, multiple other transactions. So it's really transaction heavy. Now, if you're on Polygon, it's something that that is actually quite, counterintuitive, in a sense that the more transaction that you generate, the more cost you're going to pay, because you're competing with other people for the same bandwidth, and your cost goes up. So when that happens, it is almost like you're getting punished for being successful. So we that like an anti-network effect. So that's why we think it should be like, this application, if it's going to generate a lot of transactions, it should actually have their own blockchain, so that, you don't get punished. You don't have to share the bandwidth. And in fact, you have two choices, right? So one is you can make it completely frictionless by just like, introducing a zero fee regime, or you can, institute like a small fee, and that would be actually a new revenue generation for your own protocol. So instead of bleeding value to like the base layer, so that's like the special economic design that our founder came up with.
That's interesting. This is completely going off tangent of like what we plan, but on the back of that, do you think that the future of like gamify, when you look at, let's just look at not just Axie Infinity, because I know they've got like, Ronin and they've got all this going on. They've got their own ecosystem going on. So, but do you see a future of each game, like realistically, for this really to take off and for them really to, do what they want to do, is for them to all have their own blockchain?
Oh, yes, definitely. I feel this is the way. You've seen some examples. For example, Engine, when they started growing, they decided to launch, I believe it was 2 blockchains. One is because of like a transaction fee, and maybe another one because of capability. You've seen that with Axie Infinity. Now, what I think we're looking at in GameFi is actually something quite interesting, right? So we actually, a lot of the like play to earn and, X to earn, whatever to earn concept, well, it did evolve sort of, from Axie Infinity. But the thing is that when the markets are good and people see that, it's generating like a lot of revenue, a lot of value, and people think like that's like the correct way to do it. So there were a lot of like copycat models out there, and, they may have like the 2 token model, they may have like NFTs, but actually these are very complex economic models that we don't fully understand yet. This is my personal opinion. And I believe that with academia coming in, and, you have actual people, for example, who are, a PhD in macroeconomics looking at these problems, we will have a better understanding, and things will evolve drastically over the next year. Now, the other thing that I would like to highlight with GameFi is that when we look at NFTs, we tend to, have the tendency to think that, this is like, some fantastic technology that everyone should adopt. But we're coming from the perspective of the crypto space, and I think this is a mistake. So, for example, I have 2 sons, and I had numerous discussions with them, like, about NFTs, why it's worth something. And the thing is that when it comes from the perspective of traditional gamers, they don't actually feel like there's a need for NFTs. Why? Because, well, the model is working very well. We have millions of gamers worldwide. There isn't any particular problems that they're able to see. Now, if we are able to, for example, look at the freemium model and proceed from there, we may be more likely to find a solution. And what I mean by that is very simple. For example, on the issue of ownership, definitely I asked my son, I said, like, hey, look, all your game items is on a central server. It belongs to the company. If the company is gone tomorrow, all your items are gone. Like, would you like that to happen? They said, no, I wouldn't. I said, well, the solution is there. You can use, NFTs and issue that. And I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense. And then the other issue has to do with like, how people are raising funds using tokens. So obviously, these tokens are being sold at a lower price to early investors because they're taking on a higher level of risk. But eventually these tokens end up on the market and they get dumped. So there's a huge sell pressure. And the problem with the sell pressure is that it is exactly at the weakest point of the project, which means it is on the pressure is on day one is listed, and the project may not be generating the value. So I sidestepped the question. So basically, I told them like, hey, look, So we're not going to talk about token investments or any of that. And let's assume that this game is funded. Now, would you agree to a token that perhaps is not sold for money, but this token enables a lot of things? For example, like voting in the DAO. Wouldn't you like community feedback if the game were to introduce something? Wouldn't you want to have some recognition for your participation and so on and so forth? And they actually agreed with that. So this is why I think that there's several things that we need to solve, but it's kind of like we're in a ship and we're generally moving in the right direction. It's just that we have a lot of like little tweaks that we need to make, and sometimes like we need to just like take on a different perspective to solve the problem. So I think that hasn't really happened yet, but I'm pretty sure that I'm not the only one looking at this problem. And the more discussion we have on this, the better, the faster probably we'll come out with something.
Absolutely. So yeah, from looking at the success of, for example, Axie Infinity last year, it felt like this is moving in the right direction. But obviously everything sort of with the way the market goes, because it's so dependent on the price of the token, how the success of Axie Infinity and the playability and the appeal also depends on the price of SP, is it SPS, Smooth Love Potion and Axies themselves. So when people aren't generating that same income, when it's too expensive to actually take part, like all those sort of financial elements shouldn't really be a part of gaming. So it's kind of, because it's a brand new concept, it's a learning curve, it's trial and error at this stage. So you're right, somebody needs to actually say, hold on, what, just take out this whole crypto financial element of it and just make it about gaming. And somebody needs to be selfless enough in the crypto space to do that and think less about, having a token, like you said, that's going to go on the next exchange, and think solely about what gaming problem they're solving. Because you're right, the whole thing with, if you compare like Fortnite to, if Fortnite was to become decentralized, that would probably be really appealing to people, because like you said, they wouldn't lose all of their, whatever it is, assets and things, skins.
Absolutely. And if I may add, there's a lot of work that's being done on the government and regulation side. So for example, here in Malaysia, we have something called IEO regulation. It's actually STO regulation. So I would say that we should not also, ignore, what developments that has been done on the regulated side. Yeah, because for example, I could easily launch, in order to raise funds, I could easily launch STO, for example. And for example, this STO may not have to be traded. It can be like a fixed value. And as I'm generating income, I'm paying dividends or adding to the value of the token to pay the invest. So there's like so many ways around it. So that's why I think this winter probably came at a good time, because I do see that there's so many projects that is just being launched with the same concept, and I can already see that they're going to hit the same wall. So why don't we work together to identify where the walls are and try to remove it or find some path around it? And then, we start again, with a much better understanding and approach.
Yeah, like for example, this is turned into a conversation, but when I think of like Steppen is like such a big thing, and I was really addicted to it. And had the financial part not been like such a big factor, I would still be in love with it right now, even in the bear. Right. But I think because I paid, like $1,000, $1,200 for each sneaker, and now you can go for like a fraction of that. It's kind of like, oh, I hate this app. I can't even look at it. Before I was really into it, but when I was generating those tokens, they felt like they had more value. But if I just never had that, if I never had to invest that much in the first place, then maybe I would still, it'd still be as popular even in the bear. Like sometimes I'll put it on, just think, I'm going for a walk, I'll put it on and let it track my thing and generate some tokens or whatever. But if it didn't have that massive cost implication in the first place, it wouldn't be such a sour feeling right now,
Yeah,
and you'd still be motivated. You'd still be motivated to carry on with it. So
I agree with that so much. Yeah, and definitely, I think, yes, it can be changed. And even like if we just like zoom out and think, like, for example, every country has sort of like, some, metrics on, how healthy their citizens would be, and how much that would represent in terms of saving medical costs for their nationals and stuff like that. Actually, this is actually quite a useful app. It's just that,
It's
like
really.
as you said, yeah, the incentivization is not sort of there. Maybe this should have been taken by a nation, but nation state instead of a private company. And like there's so many ways, like we could have done this. Even for example, I had a discussion with a friend who was doing traditional app. So in the traditional app, their funding is actually through, for example, okay, their revenue model is, for example, through, let's say, Google Ads, for example, right? So so a lot of this, new play to earn games, they've actually adopted this game, but they've removed the ad revenue portion, for example, right? So why would you do that, right? Well, because of user experience, obviously, but by doing that, it also takes away like a traditional revenue channel, and it also means that, hey, now you have to sell these sneakers at 1,200 a pair, and they may not be worth anything if the ROI is not there, and stuff like that. Yeah, but I totally agree. There has to be a change, and whatever we see now is probably like not going to be the thing that is going to be the thing 5 years down the line.
Yeah, it's sad because it looked like Stefan was going to be the thing that changed. It actually got me out of my sofa and got me walking my kids to school.
That's a good thing.
Yeah, like actually I was like, I'm going to walk today. I'm not going to drive. I'm going to walk him to school. And that's the first time I realized that school is only a 5-minute walk. All this time I've been thinking it's like 5-minute drive. There must be a half hour. Yeah. It's literally a 5-minute walk.
It is strange. Like I do have friends who have Stepan and also Sweatcoin. So they're like, oh, I'm making double the rewards. Like, okay, fine. Yeah.
It was so good. It was so good. And I wish I still had that motivation, but it shouldn't really impact me, but it does. It does. It's like, at this. So yeah, that's a shame that it was so like.
I think the summary is really like tokenization does have a lot of power. It does have a lot of value. It just like how are we harnessing it? I think we have to be really careful because it can be a really dangerous thing. And I can see, for example, in the regulated space, and I'll just share my experience. But in the regulated space with STOs, the customer group is not actually startups as far as the understanding in Malaysia goes. So, for example, the deal flow would actually be through traditional corporate bankers. And when traditional corporate bankers, bring in deals, they're not bringing deals from like, this new 3-month-old startup. They'll be dealing with like, proper like listed companies with, millions and millions of dollars or billions of dollars of assets, right? So I was a little bit confused at first. So I was thinking like, well, if they're such a big company, then, why would they be interested in tokenization? Then they shared that look, the one of the most valuable things for a listed company is actually their equity, their shares. So when you have tokenization, you can actually, for example, just a really rough example, let's say they have a solar panel project. Then they'll be able to, let's say, acquire land and, set up the management team, they put in the capital, they buy the solar panels. But within all that, the component that is probably the riskiest for them is the actual solar panel itself. So so they would go to a STO market and they would tokenize the solar panel, for example, and they would, offer some returns for that, right? So what's the worst thing that can go wrong? Well, they're not selling equity. They're selling solar panel. The worst thing that can go wrong is that you want your money back, and they say, well, maybe you can, and maybe you should go to my farm and pick up a solar panel. So so it's almost, I would try to avoid the word perversion, but what I'm saying is that tokenization is something that we truly do not understand yet. But it is extremely powerful. And, if we just have this very simple idea that, a lot of things in the world can be tokenized, like goodwill or something, or, just really intangible stuff that exists right now, that would add probably trillions and trillions of dollars into the world economy. And that's kind of like, hey, we know it's that powerful. But in terms of like actually harnessing it, we don't have enough understanding. I think, this is my personal opinion. Perhaps the other people will have a different opinion, but I'm certainly up for more conversation in this very particular topic to anyone interested.
I agree. Like, yeah, the token thing. You need a token. I think is a massive subject.
Yes.
There needs to be, I feel like there needs to be, like, how like we don't want regulation, right? We're scared of regulation and that sort of thing. I feel like there needs to be somebody. I know we should be decentralized, but I feel like there should be somebody who makes the call. This doesn't need to be tokenized. Don't tokenize it. Like, I know enough to tell you that this doesn't need to be tokenized, So I feel like that needs to happen. Otherwise, everything's being tokenized for absolutely no reason. And in some ways, like I said, tokenization can be really, really helpful. So going back to the questions, going back to Octopus Protocol, where do you see yourselves in like 5 years? I see you building this. You've got this grant, like you said, from Cosmos to build the IBC bridge. Where do you see yourselves after this? Where do you see, what's the vision for Octopus in 5 years from now?
Well, I think, I think I can extrapolate what's going to happen in the space, simply because if you take all the Web2 businesses and try to fit them into, all the layer ones and, existing chains in Web3, it is not possible to do that. So totally one of the best ways to, to scale, to increase capacity is to launch more chains. And thanks to Polkadot and Cosmos, it's so much easier to do that today, like, easier than ever before. So I do see the amount of chains being launched just keep on increasing. But beyond that, I think that we're sacrificing usability in a certain sense, and that has to be, reestablished. And this is why I'm really excited about protocols like Layer 0, XLR, Unilayer, because I think that no one wants to deal with like 1,000 wallets on 1,000 chains. What they really want is just one single interface where you can access like, all this liquidity on, multiple chains. So for example, if you take the amount of liquidity on Ethereum and you compare it to, the amount of liquidity on all the other layer ones and multi-chain and whatnot, you probably come up with another Ethereum, and that's massive. And so I think usability really has to improve. And I think that we're far from reaching that destination. The next exciting segment in the crypto space will be this kind of multi-chain protocols, that can access liquidity on various chains. And with that, multi-chain decentralized applications is going to be extremely exciting. Yeah. And and I hope that comes in line with improvements in DeFi, for example, because, hey, if there's two applications offering the same yield, let's say 5%, it is not the same because, they're using different codes. They're have a different way of achieving this 5% return, which means the risk profile is different. So I guess, if, DeFi can have sort of like a reliable rating for risk, that would help a lot. And, seeing what has happened with like 3AC and, UST and stuff like that, hopefully that, mitigates the risk. Hopefully we have like a standard, well accepted standard for bridges, because we just can't have people, who are not, qualified or geared up, to launch, XYZ custom bridges that they think is safe because it's audited by someone. And, even with the audit, it still gets hacked, so we can't have that anymore. We need definitely better understanding of tokenomics. There's various popular forms, So that's just probably a part of what I would say. Is in I don't have a crystal ball, but I'm just extrapolating the current this current industry, and I can see that happening like within the next 2 to 3 years. And and hopefully from there we would have a situation where, for example, a lot of people are saying like this is a .com moment for crypto because of the amount of like capital that just destroyed recently. And if that is the .com moment for crypto, I really hope that this is where the Googles and Amazons is going to rise from ashes and like hey, prove to the world that Web3 works.
Yeah, definitely. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in the next 1 year, never mind 5 years. I think a lot.
It does take time to build infrastructure, and that's why, for example, ETH 2.0 is not out yet. When it's out, massive improvements. It's going to happen. But at the same time, when Ethereum moves to staking, for example, then we have a concern on the decentralization of staking. So there's a fantastic project called SSV.network. They're literally like on Vitalik's number one item on his paper on Ethereum 2.0. So that's how this space is just going to evolve. And obviously, if Ethereum is decentralizing the validator network, then I believe many other layer ones who are using proof of stake would actually need to look at it as well. So I think that there's just so much exciting things going on. We can't really tell the future, but I would say that it's going to be rather exciting this time around.
Yeah, I think it is. There's going to be a massive difference. The last thing I just wanted to ask is, it's like we've said, it's a winter. It's where the projects we see which projects are going to outlast and which ones are going to fall off by the wayside because the market's the way it is. What advice would you give to our uplifters, to our community, of how to outlast the bear market?
That's a really good question, and I think a lot of people has been speaking about this. So obviously, I think in terms of business management, the first rule when it comes to an unfavorable condition is really to just cut off the excess. And I think that's why there were so many layoffs, with Coinbase and, so many other companies in the space. I think they've learned from 2017. That's why the reaction this time was really drastic and really fast. I don't think that's a wrong thing to do, but certainly, that would be the first thing to do when you are faced with an adverse, environment. Now, the second thing to do is really, to try to continue the project, but it's sort of in a way where, if I'm having X amount of cost input, then I need to have a measurable result that, for example, if my project depends on the number of users, active users, then whatever I'm spending actually needs to go directly into achieving that aim. Yeah. So anything else is sort of just not so important. Yeah. And but then again, there are people who are not so proactive. There are people sitting by the sidelines and just waiting for the next big thing, and just trying to hold out 1 or 2 years until then. But there will be projects that will not make it, and this is just the way it is. 97 of startups fail. So if you're a responsible founder, I think you have to be honest. I think you have to be on the level of your investors. This is my situation. This is what we got. What do you think we should do? I think, it's not the best of news. It's not the best of topic to discuss with people or even with the community. But I believe that, that's the right thing to do. And beyond that, I've seen projects where, they've gotten to a point where, for example, some play-to-earn games, they've gotten to a point where you can barely make any money off it. But the number of daily active users did not decrease 90% like the token price. So there's a particular application that decreased around, I think the retention was pretty good in a sense that I think it's May, there was 80% retention. And right now they're probably at about 50-60% retention, right? So you still will have people who's believe in the project, and they don't care about price or money or anything. They feel like a sense of belonging there. They want to help, So this very altruistic, elements in the space, I believe is ultimately gonna drive it through the winter. Yeah, but I think definitely above all else, I think everyone needs to be really transparent, really honest, look yourself in the mirror and just decide like, hey, yeah, I'm going to be honest. I'm not going to mislead everyone, and that would be, I would say, yeah, the most fundamental thing that we need in this space, and because that's the thing that sets us apart from any other industry out there, which is just like profit oriented. Yeah.
Yeah, and what I do find like is a shame about the space is, like I said, 97% of startups fail. Doesn't mean that 90% of them are scams. They just failed. They didn't, hit the mark. They didn't, they ran out of resources. Things didn't, work out. They didn't meet the milestones they were meant to meet. So yeah, and I guess it's just part of the industry at the moment, isn't it? Until we've got
and
work out what we're doing.
Oh yeah, and the future is not bleak at all. I've seen projects that have managed to revive themselves from 2017. Yeah, these projects have gone on to do great things. There was a particular project that was by a very brilliant guy. I mean, this guy was literally like a co-founder of a very popular wallet back in 2017. So he decided to go on his own, and his idea for like a repo market. Like, I've met this guy, fantastic guy, right? But just unfortunate, like the timing was unfortunate, so the token price didn't do well. And then he discovered Polkadot, and in the end, what they did is they started a Polkadot project, and they did like a token swap over to this new project, and they actually, did quite well, So it's not like the end of the world, if you don't make it. I think there's always a way out, but the key to that is just like being honest, keep communicating with people, yeah, and the best time to find genuine people is this time, when all this yeah, I mean, it's short-term people, who are interested in just money is gone. They're gone from the space.
I feel like at this stage, you can't sell on hype at this stage.
Exactly.
At the height of the market, you can just say, we've got so-and-so and we're doing so-and-so, and do really, say really superficial things, and you can sell the hype. Whereas in this market, you've really got to sell the fundamentals and the core values of your project. Like the hype's not going to sell. No one's buying. So that's what I think, like you said, it shows it sets them apart, the genuine ones.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, so I've done so inside the accelerator course, I provided a video for community building. So if anyone is interested in that, to apply for our accelerator program, and I'll share my thoughts on what I think. Of course, it's a ever evolving field, and I love feedbacks, from everyone. But definitely, yeah, we're the community has grown. I know there are some people putting up metrics. Hey, the number of transactions is back to like 3 years ago, 4 years ago. But it's not what it's quantitative metric. Qualitatively, I would say that there is a lot more people that is still active despite that it's winter. And for me personally, that's a really encouraging sign. So yeah, it's different. I think we've gone stronger. I think we've gone bigger. We have a lot more brains in the space. And that really set us up well for the future.
Perfect. Thank you so much for joining us today and your really valuable insight and telling us about Octopus Protocol and what you guys are trying to achieve. I would love if you could share your blog with us, the one about the bridge that you're making, any links to your Web3 developers courses, anything that you want to share with us. We'd love to share that with our community and post it with our video as well. So thank you so much for your time today, and I hope to speak to you again soon.
Thank you very much. And yeah, have a good day, and definitely let us know what we can do in return for you guys as well. Thank you.
All right, perfect. Thank you.